Welcome back, 4:23. We're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive on the home of free speech and common sense. JK till 7, that breaking news. Tulip Siddiq. Yes, I'm not wrong to tell you. Tulip Siddiq used to be the anti-corruption minister. She's resigned minutes ago because she's apparently allegedly under criminal investigation for corruption in Bangladesh, where her aunt was the Prime Minister. We're joined by, well, the main man, the political editor for The Sun, who's taking part in Dry January and looks fantastic for it. How are you, son?
I'll take that. 2 weeks and counting. 14 days today.
Is it difficult, Harry Cole? Yeah, it's bloody awful, isn't it? It's awful.
You don't live longer, it just feels longer.
Yes. I mean, I was ill over Christmas, didn't have a drink. Now I'm going to drink like a fish. Tulip Siddiq.
Yeah, I mean, the writing, I think, has been on the wall for a couple of days now. Each day that Keir Starmer allowed his sort of neighbour, friend, close pal, more and more time, you know, more and more things came out. And this morning it was revealed from Bangladesh, which is now at a criminal investigation over a land dispute well, her aunt was obviously ousted as the sort of, you know, depending on which paper you read, the despot of Bangladesh or a sort of political coup. But look, I mean, she says, look, I was cleared and I've become a distraction, that's why I'm going. Actually, you drill down into the letter, the investigation by the Prime Minister's ethics advisor. She said, I referred myself. Yeah, she was told.
Very honourable, yeah.
She was told to refer herself or get out. Yeah. He's come back. Laurie Magnus is this chap. He's got a glorious name. He sounds like something out of a sort of P.G. Woodhouse novel. I love you always love officials called Laurie. A name you only ever hear in the Foreign Office, isn't it?
It's a name that can be male or female.
Yeah, but he said, look, basically, she should have been, given she was the anti-corruption minister and a Treasury minister, she should have been probably more aware of issues arising around conflicts of interest and close family associations. It's a very unusual case, but she should have been more aware of it. And he said, I would not advise that this shortcoming would be taken as a breach of the ministerial code, the rule book. But he says, and this is the killer line, but you will want to consider her ongoing responsibilities in light of this, which he basically said, get rid of her.
You make the point, friend of Starmer's, neighbour of Starmer's. He, again, proving himself to be quite possibly the most incompetent git I've ever known. Well, says the door is always open to you.
That's what they kind of say.
But not to an anti-corruption minister. It's just been done for corruption, allegedly.
She won't be coming back in that job. Look, I mean, if you compare and contrast to the letter he sent Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, had to resign, and when she turns out she'd been on the fiddle with a mobile phone and she hadn't quite declared that. He sent a very, very tetchy, angry two-line letter that said, thank you for your service, now get out.
Oh, basically.
Really? And this one's a lot more warm. You know, it depends. If you're an ally of the PM, if you're mates with the PM, he's not the first Prime Minister to have done this. You basically get a sort of... I was going to say something rude then. You get a pat on the back, should we say, on the way out the door. But like, pretty embarrassing. Again, in those heady days of July, when they came in, I mean, everyone raised eyebrows at the time. And then, that's really a disaster. And this isn't some...
Can I ask you a question?
This isn't some right-wing sort of like tabloid... It was the FT that was doing the guidance.
This is your job, right? This is what I don't understand. If I'd spent 5 years in opposition waiting for my destiny to be Prime Minister, I would have thought that I would have had people around me who would have done the maths or done the investigations or known that the person I was making corruption minister wasn't going to be in corruption, that the person I was making transport minister hadn't conned an insurance company.
I know it goes back to another old character. Sue Gray was meant to be the expert that had been planning all this time for government. She was the one doing junior ministerial appointments. She was the one sitting with the blackboard. She was meant to have been the sort of government, you know, formerly the government's ethics czar. Probity was meant to be her #1 issue, and God knows what she was doing, because she wasn't looking into the people that they let into the Treasury.
Well, talking about the Treasury, Rachel from Accounts.
I think that's a bit unfair.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't.
Why?
I don't know. She's still the chance. I mean, you know, there's a bit of steel to Rachel Reeves, which I think...
Mate, there might be steel, but for God's sake, even she's admitted today that she might need to have an emergency budget. The problem for them is if you talk about a black hole and then you give your union mates the pay rise...
The problem is they did talk... There were two negatives to begin with. They basically... You know, being the government and being in opposition is two very different things. In opposition, you can say what the hell you want. You can sling all sorts of, you know, rhetoric around. When you're the Chancellor saying the country's down the creek, you know, well, people who make money and follow this stuff and invest in this country sit up and listen when it's the Chancellor. So I think they slightly overcooked it, well, massively overcooked it in the early days, plus the £40 billion of tax rises. Now, what's becoming increasingly clear, I think, is that there's a credibility gap. JP Morgan are out saying, look, frankly, the bond markets don't believe what the Chancellor is saying. That is toxic. So they're going to
That's like Liz Truss,
at some point they're going to have to actually stop talking out the side of their mouths, stop saying, yeah, we're very serious, and actually do something, and that has to be cuts. Yep. The bond market wants to see some actual spine. When the Labour Party say, we're going to cut 3 or 4 billion off the welfare bill, everyone goes, no, you're not. Because they've spent years and years and years saying evil Tory cuts, taking away benefits. They've spent years and years and years lecturing about austerity. So now when they're saying it, everyone's going, well, have you actually got the spine for this? Have you got the political...
Views easy from the cheap seats, isn't it?
They've got the majority to do it. They could lose 100 MPs on a vote on this stuff and still be able to push it through. So I think what they need to see is actual action. And there was a white paper before Christmas, or just before Christmas, about reforming the benefits. It was bilged. There was nothing in it. It was a laughing stock. So I think it won't be called an emergency budget. It won't be framed as that. But I do think they're going to have to put some actual tangible cuts on the table if they want to restore confidence in the markets. There's been a slow burn since October. It didn't happen immediately like Liz Truss. It didn't go whoop and just drop off immediately, but the frog has been boiled in the pan, so to speak.
I love the frog has been boiled in the pan.
You don't hear that expression enough.
No, you don't. You should have, especially if you're French. Can you, on a serious note, before we talk about the main news story, which is reform, this man is, to many, led by your paper, is viewed as a complete and utter imbecile. Not a day goes by. Today, my corruption minister, you can come back. Yesterday, he didn't back Rachel Reeves, and then while we were on air, Downing Street came out and said she will be the Prime Minister. Apparently, they're reporting today that he's also told David Lammy, the world's worst ever foreign secretary.
That was last. The problem is it's a slight political naivety in the fact that they should never have confirmed Lammy would be... That was before Christmas as well, when there was all sort of speculation that he was going to get the bullet.
How poor is he?
Well, the Chagos deal tomorrow, which sounds like it's coming tomorrow, that's going to be a very rough ride for the Foreign Office if it's true that they are really giving £9 billion to Mauritius to take away territory that does...
They are Mauritius. There's $9 billion, but to take away we're going to freeze our pensioners to death.
There's speculation that it was meant to be a 99-year lease on the naval base, and now it's going to be 49 years. So
screw the pensioners, screw the farmers.
I suspect there'll be some shouting about that.
There is going to be loads. You are a political, I'm going to say, animal, OK? You are... I'm not going to guess your age, but I guess in your lifetime, this is all about me being 60. I was always told, as I said to Richard Tice just then, that this was a two-party system, that PR would never happen, proportional representation, the two main parties would never change. We saw the Liberal Democrats sort of come and go, get
on
into
71
coalition.
now.
Last night, that YouGov poll, I think, points to a reset in British politics.
Well, this is what
massive importance.
You were skiving last week when I had a chat with your lovely friend Ian Collins.
Who? I wasn't skiving. It was Christmas. He's such a cheeky git, honestly.
Which is again like which is what Keir Starmer he's realised the problems. He's identified the issue, which is basically he's going to be fighting a what he would see as a right-wing populist force at the next election. Be it the Tories shift massively to the right, and look at Kemi Badenoch's language this morning, talking about peasant cultures and stuff. That could have, that would make Nigel Farage blush on a good day. I suspect some of that. The entire Tory party is unrecognisable in terms of where they were even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I'd say. So look, everything's shifting to the right. Is it going to be reform, maybe, or is it going to be a sort of, someone in Kemi or perhaps someone else in the Tory party who takes on that sort of reform mantle? But what is clear is the sort of what the political nerds, the scientists call the Overton window, which is essentially what is considered the acceptable space of political debate has shifted massively to the right. And Starmer knows that with the smash the gangs and getting tough on illegal immigration, and that's why he wouldn't talk about tax cuts, tax rises before the elections. He knows that people want low taxes, efficient public services, lower immigration, and culture wars. They've had enough of it. So the whole window is shifted, and we're seeing that in the fact reform. You add up reform of the Tories, that's a right-wing government in this country, and it was whether we're looking at Keir Starmer being almost a blip in the cultural shift across the West. It happening in America,
across
with
the
Trump.
world.
Yeah,
we're the only country that's gone left.
Australia, the Labour government are in trouble. Canada will go right wing as soon as there's an election, which is due, I think, before the autumn.
October.
Canada will go. France, look at France. I'm not sure we want to go that far, but even Germany, the socialist government, the socialist chancellor with his Rainbow Coalition, completely up the creek. So weirdly, Britain is kind of an outlier this year, and I think that's because the Tories cocked up so badly after 40 years that actually they shifted to the left, but no one else is. And so is Keir Starmer just a blip in a wider shift? And that poll was just it is. And whether Farage and the Tories that do some form of deal or a non-aggression pact, or, as you know, Boris Johnson would argue, you know, you don't need to do that, you just need to sort of own the space, which is what he tried to do in 2019, and it worked. But, you know...
But he had to have a deal. He had to have a deal from Farage.
I mean, well, the weird thing about that deal in 2019, though, the reform the Tories did under the table, was essentially the reform backed off in Tory-held seats. Now, actually... sorry, the Brexit Party backed off in Tory-held... Actually, where reform are doing incredibly well is in the what would be traditional Labour areas, the northern heartlands, the forgotten coastal parts of Britain. And actually, you know, the Tories are still just about holding up in some of the shires. Lib Dems ate into them massively in some of the more affluent countryside around the country. But where Reform are doing brilliantly is in Labour seats. They are, you know, they are second to Labour in about 80, I think it's about 81 seats across the country. Now, that's a massive problem for Labour and for the Tory party. This alignment is clearly happening before our eyes, and you know there is a chance, and if that hole is repeated, and it could only get worse, could get worse for Kemi Badenoch, is as the Tories get squeezed into the teens, then you're essentially saying, well, actually, it's the Tories that are splitting the right-wing vote.
Absolutely.
And they should, you know, they should tuck in behind.
And I'll make a suggestion to you. I suspect there's a gentleman called James Cleverly and others like him who will sit very quietly for 2 years.
Absolutely.
Because I think she... I'm not even going to criticise her. People will say she's not up to it, she's not experienced enough. I think this is all going to be about this movement towards reform, and I think you're absolutely right. There will become questions within 18 months to 2 years about the Tories. Are they what they were?
Well, the irony is...
I don't know where they are.
The irony is with Kemi Badenoch, you've got an incredibly gut instinct right-winger.
Yep.
You've got to, you know, her instincts are correct on these issues. You know, if you're a sort of right-winger and you're sort of trying to realign the country to the right, there's not much. I doubt there's very much that her and Nigel Farage would disagree on. The problem is that she's still got hampered to her is this sort of leftist rump of the Tory party that's going to howl and squeal and complain. You've already seen it. They're already trying to knife Robert Jenrick for saying, you know, alien cultures. And the problem is that can any leader of the Tory party keep that Tory coalition, which is quite broad, together when they're being outflanked on the right? I think it's very... I'm not sure any Tory leader could do it.
I think
maybe Boris.
I think you'll get 3 parties with 200 seats. It is always a pleasure. Do you know how difficult it is to get this incredibly famous and hard-working man? And good luck with dry January. You've gone through a whole pint of water.
Well, I've been to the gym, that's why.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Get out of here. What are you doing? Harry Cole, superstar. Thank you for coming on. 0344 419 1000.